Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. We are in between Blackhawks hockey against the dreaded Minnesota Wild as they took them on last night at the United Center, and they will take them on tomorrow on Thursday up in Minnesota. I am Ron Luce, GM Ron, joined by Mr. Tony Anthony Marchese. Tone, happy Wednesday. How are you, my friend?
Happy Wednesday, Ronald. Cheers, crack 'em. I know you don't have a beverage with you. Well, you got a thermos there.
I got this for you.
What is? I don't even know what that is. I don't know what you're drinking there. That looks interesting. Ron, I'm doing well. It's good to be back on these airwaves. We've been doing this weekly, talking a little Blackhawks hockey, and we got a lot of topics to get to today, my friend. A lot of ups, a lot of downs in the Blackhawks world to talk about. And I know that, as we do on most show days, we have our pre-show meeting. You got some spicy stuff to talk about once again here today. I'm excited for it. And I think the listeners should be too. Man, last week's show was fun, Ron. It was fun. We had a good comment section. I'm hoping that we have that tonight as well. If you're here in the YouTube or on X joining us, feel free, hop in the comments, chat with us. Ron, it's time to get this show on the road, my friend.
Yes, it is, Tone. This is episode 20 of season 7 of the Four Feathers podcast. Blackhawks got the kids jumping. And I'll tell you what, we've seen some exciting hockey over the last 3 games since our last show. Hello to you, Bluebins. We've seen an OT win, an OT loss, and a little bit of a Vegas hangover snoozer all mixed in here over the course of the last handful of games. But then, of course, Tony, Sasha Boisvert has officially signed the worst kept secret maybe in the world of Blackhawks hockey, really over the last month since Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times originally reported on the matter. What say you about Sasha Boisvert before we get into some of the takeaways here from the last 3 games?
Hey, I think this was the one that we were all waiting for. Obviously, the news of him getting held out last week when we were talking on these airwaves about the Sasha Boisvert incident, or so to speak. It led to a lot of speculation, but I think that we all kind of knew that this was going to be the end game in the beginning of the season, just with his transfer from Dakota over to BU. The way that season went by with a whole lot of not good, I would say, Ron. I don't exactly know how to put it. I wouldn't call it like the worst season overall for a college hockey player, but it definitely wasn't up to the level that I think anybody really expected as a follow-up season to his time in North Dakota. But he signs his entry-level deal. I believe it was on his 20th birthday. Some visa issues prevented him from getting in the lineup. Excited to see what you get out of Sasha Boisvert in the first little foray that he's able to participate in actual Blackhawks hockey.
Yeah, 100%. And a quick happy birthday and hello to Joseph in our comments. And hello, Daniel Barry. Happy Wednesday to you as well. Tone, I agree with Boisvert. Again, we knew he was going to turn pro. And this has pretty much been his plan all along. It was 2 years in college and make the transition no matter what. As you mentioned, started off in North Dakota, had a great freshman season at North Dakota. In fact, pretty much was the player of, leading scorer for North Dakota as a freshman, had a great season. Everybody was expecting a step forward, and it just didn't happen at BU. Some injuries kept him off the ice for a little bit of time. He was suspended for a fight in which he absolutely kicked the shit out of an opponent. And to your point, it was not a great season, but the whole BU team kind of just had a really weird stench about it this year. It was their worst season in 12 years.
Again, like I said, wasn't great.
Yeah, it was, and granted, I mean, they still made the conference tournament. They were still a 500 team. They didn't have an atrocious season by most standards, but this is BU, right? This is one of the hockey meccas of NCAA in the United States. For them to have a 500 season is incredibly rare. And we saw Cole Hudson is debuting this evening for the Washington Capitals. He's already made a couple of really nice plays on the ice, just standing out and being a quality addition for them. We saw his teammate Yzerman is signed with the New York Islanders. They've already reported that he's going to join the AHL team, however, but he has turned pro as well. And now you've got Boisvert as well, who has now joined the Blackhawks. We will see him down the stretch here. To your point, though, Tone, the visa issues will hold him out for probably a few days. They're hoping that it's just going to be until maybe tomorrow. They said a couple of days when the original report came out. So there's a chance we'll probably see him, if not on Thursday night against the Wild, for sure, probably on Friday against the Avalanche, which I think would make a lot of sense. Let him debut at home as well in front of the Blackhawks faithful. And Tone, honestly, this one just feels like a finally. Like it's happened. Now let's just see what he can do, right? Big two-way player, has kind of a grit to his game that I think a lot of people are excited to see. There's a lot of belief that his game will translate better at the pro level than it did at the collegiate level. And I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table, whether he's playing center, whether he's playing wing, what have you. He's a big body and he brings something that the Hawks don't have a ton of in this lineup currently.
I agree with that. And the assessment on the fact that they need somebody to sort of stand up for someone was on display in this game against Minnesota. First shift, Connor Bedard takes a massive hit. And, we'll talk a little bit about this more as we get towards the games and everything. But I would like to see that physicality from the Chicago Blackhawks a little bit more. Connor Murphy was sort of that guy this year, getting into scrums, getting into a lot of the mixes and just standing up for guys. Nick Foligno, obviously, as well, when he was on the ice, was sort of a presence to be reckoned with. But it's a very young team, and you don't have a lot of grit guys. And I'm hoping that Sasha Boisvert is someone that could wind up being a little bit of a force to be reckoned with down the stretch here, Ron. I want to see the physicality.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll have to wait and see hello as people join us here in the comment section. Yeah, I think the physicality will be a nice change of pace. Jeff Blashill even kind of commented on it as well. He said, yeah, he plays a little bit of a heavy game. It's something we don't have a lot of in our lineup right now. And I think that's going to be welcomed. And it'll be interesting to see how he's deployed. I think he's very much, again, right, we heard Blashill say it. He's going to have to earn his ice time. He's not just going to be thrown up on Bedard's wing or something like that. He's realistically probably going to start in the bottom six. And truthfully, I think if his game translates the way people are hoping it does to the pro game, I think that's the best place for him long-term is as a kind of a bottom six player, whether it's on the wing or at center. It allows him to use that physicality. And again, maybe there's enough skill and finesse there as well, though, where, in a pinch or if you need to hit the line blender, you can see him play up a little bit in the lineup too and support some of your better players, Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar, etc. So I'm just excited. This is the time of year where it's fun, Tone, because we get to see some of these new faces. Last year it was Sam Renzel and Oliver Moore. The season before that, it was Landon Slaggert. And at the very end, Frank Nazar. And now it's going to be Sasha Boisvert for a little bit. And hopefully Anton Frondel, and we'll actually be talking about him a fair amount a little bit later in the show. But Tone, let's talk about the current Blackhawks. What's happening on the ice? An interesting 3-game stretch. Like we said, they went 1-1-1 since our last show. It was a little bit of deja vu against the Utah Mammoth. The last time you and I took these airwaves, they were coming off a 3-2 overtime win against the Mammoth. Another 3-2 win in overtime against the Mammoth. This time, though, it's Connor Bedard barking at the fans, calling fans bitches after he scores the game winner. Tony, I don't know about you, but I love the unhinged Connor Bedard that we've gotten to see recently. It kind of gets me fired up to watch Blackhawks hockey on a regular basis again.
Yeah, Connor Bedard's quickly become, and I don't know if we really expected this level of, I don't even know, grungy Bedard.
Grungy,
just like
grungy's
angry.
A fun word.
I think it's sort of grungy the way that he's been playing, man. Mixing it up with fans, mixing it up on the ice. We started to see a little bit of this towards the end of last season, and it's really evolved as the year has gone on. And I think especially since the trade deadline, you've got Connor Bedard sort of out there fighting for himself. And, as I mentioned just now when we were talking about Sasha Boisvert and what he can bring to the table, I don't exactly always like that. I don't want that to be his primary role, but it's good to see that he's able to put the team on his back and kind of be that guy, that agitator, as well as, a superstar young kid. That's you're starting to see the veteran presence, Bedard, slowly evolve here after the sophomore season, his third year in the league. And he doesn't want to take shit. And that's a good sign, right? Again, he's not the biggest guy on the ice. I don't want him getting into, fights with guys that are twice his size and could wind up putting Bedard out of the lineup for a considerable amount of time should things escalate. But the version of Connor Bedard that we have right now is very different than what we saw in his rookie season. He's an agitator right now for this team. And I think that's for a team that's lacking some of that sandpaper. It's got to come from somewhere. And if Bedard is the one doing it, by all means, I'm glad to see it. I want more of that attitude from the rest of the guys. I don't want him to be left alone on an island, being the only one that's playing physical, playing hard, and sort of stirring the drink a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to see some of those guys step up. I think Oliver Moore has a little bit of that in his game too, and I think he's right now very, very much missed as a part of this Blackhawks lineup with the injury that's keeping him out right now. And it'll certainly be nice to see him back, whether that's this season or next year at this point. But Tony, this game against Utah also had a lot of other positives. Bertuzzi, Nazar, both getting on the board as well in this one. Those two plus Connor Bedard all had 2 points in this affair in that OT win against Utah. So your best players carrying you to victory is always encouraging. And of course, Spencer Knight in his return after the illness, brilliant against Utah in that game on the road. But it didn't really translate over so much into Saturday. A little bit of you kind of put it, a little bit of the Sin City flu may have taken over the Blackhawks on Saturday night in Vegas. A 4-0 loss to the Golden Knights. They really just didn't show up in this game, is how it felt. Nobody was ready to play. They felt ill-prepared. And then, of course, this was the Pavel Dorofeyev show. 3 points from him, including a pair of tucks. Maybe a little foreshadowing, per se, on a guy the Hawks could look at this offseason, because I don't think Vegas is going to be able to pay him.
Ooh.
Little interesting thing to see there as well.
Ron does keep tabs on things like this.
Sure does. And there's some foreshadowing here for a little piece that I am currently working on that should be coming out here within the week, I'll say, because if it doesn't get out by next Wednesday, it won't get out until the following Wednesday, probably. So you will see that one out over at OnTapSportsNet.com here in the next week or so from myself. Tone, any other thoughts on that Vegas game?
It was probably not the best game to watch on on a Saturday night, man. It was ugly. I didn't really like get angry about this one. Kind of just knew that this was out of hand when it was. Artie Levshunov had a nice goal that got waved off towards the end of this one. Other than that, I mean, Blackhawks just sort of slept in through this, and I kind of look at this one as kind of what you mentioned. They might have had a little bit of the Sin City flu getting into Vegas, and I don't know, just not the best game. I thought that they had a lot of momentum coming into this and could have put up a lot better of a fight. You can question, were they ready to play? Obviously, the answer to that question was no. Hope for better results. And I think, as we get in and talk a little bit about Tuesday's matchup, I think that there was a better effort given than what you saw on Saturday. Saturday was not their game.
Agreed. And those are going to happen, especially out on the West Coast. It was kind of a gauntlet of sorts that the Hawks have been on really in this month of March. A bunch of matchups with Utah. Of course, they're going to see Colorado coming up. They're playing Minnesota. I mean, this is some of the better teams in the Western Conference that they've seen on this recent stretch. And, yeah, sometimes you can have those games where it just doesn't go your way. But Tuesday, Tone, a good one at the United Center, an early start, 6:30 start as a part of a doubleheader for TNT. They were the first game. De facto return to the United Center. Nick Foligno with the Minnesota Wild got a very respectable standing ovation, especially for a guy who was here through a lot of bad years of Blackhawks hockey. But certainly the city, I think, appreciating his veteran leadership and what he brought to this team over the last few years. But it's another OT loss. And I agree with you. A better game, maybe a little bit of a slow start. I mean, the Hawks were down 2-0 pretty quickly. They rallied back. Minnesota made it 3-1, but great effort from them to battle back and force overtime. Just unfortunate that Bertuzzi and Levshinov just couldn't get off the ice. That group of three just was stuck and pinned in their end, and ultimately a game winner for the Wild. And Tony, you said it immediately that this one goes and should go on the list of our games they'll want back. Would you like to make the case for this one to stick as our 13th entry on the tracker for the season?
Yeah, if you put yourself in a situation where you're able to force overtime with a late goal, you should have the momentum. And that's a big reason why I think that this one goes into that category, Ron. Unfortunately, with this loss, the Hawks have fallen to the Minnesota Wild 19 times in a row. And this was, I believe, the first time that they've taken them to overtime in that stretch. And Blackhawk Cowboy, shout out Mr. Cowboy, wrote about this in his post-game roundup on this one. I believe you have to go all the way back to 2019, Ron, to find a Chicago Blackhawks winner over the Minnesota Wild. That's pretty disgusting. You have to know that that's probably on a lot of these guys' minds, even though they weren't here when this streak started. But to be dominated by another franchise that many times over and over again, you look at most of the young guys; they've never defeated the Minnesota Wild yet. So eventually, those tides are going to turn, and I expect that they will sometime in the next couple of years. But it's been a long run of success for Minnesota when they're lacing them up against Chicago. I think this is one they're going to want back, and I think that they're going to play a better game coming up here. And you got another back-to-back. So, you just didn't get the job done in overtime. You talk about Tyler Bertuzzi and Ari Levshinov getting sort of stuck in their zone. I think it was a 2-minute shift for, if not Bertuzzi, both of those guys. Connor Bedard had maybe one chance in that overtime, and then everything else was all Minnesota. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a way that you just stop the puck, take a face off there. If you're Spencer Knight, I have to go back and rewatch the overtime. It just didn't feel like there was many opportunities for the Hawks to sort of change the trajectory of where that was going. I would have liked to have seen a little more offensive pressure. As soon as Artem Levshinov came out onto the ice, I sort of got a little bit worried. He made a lot of interesting decisions in that game. A couple of them that I was sort of questioning whether or not that should lead to a benching or more limited ice time. But alas, he had his longest ice time of his career, and Jeff Blashill sort of gave him some flowers for his play. I thought there was a couple of times out there that I wouldn't really agree with that. Maybe that's Jeff Blashill trying to build this guy up, and I know they want to put a lot more on Ari Levshinov as the rest of the season winds down here, just to get as much experience and work in for him as you possibly can. That's going to help his development. But I didn't like who was on the ice up against what Minnesota had on the ice during that time, and it proved to be one that I think that they'll want back. I didn't like the way they managed the overtime. I didn't like the way they managed the puck in overtime. I didn't like the way that they managed their shifts in overtime. It was a very long, just about 3 minutes of 3-on-3 hockey there that was very putrid to watch, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, and I think it is unfortunate that the guys that got stuck on the ice in overtime were the guys that got stuck on the ice in overtime. And I think that's a testament, though, just to, we know this roster's not there yet, right? There's still a need for additional talent besides guys like Frank Nazar and Connor Bedard. And And it's coming, all right? There's players that are going to come down the pipeline. And
But those guys also got to figure out a way to get out of their own zone and get off the ice.
100%. I think it's just unfortunate because I just don't think Tyler Bertuzzi is an effective 3-on-3 player, and that's just not his game. And it's not a shot at him or
not at all.
Flaw. It's just when it's 3-on-3, it's about speed. And when you've got Quinn Hughes taking 3-minute shifts in overtime on the other side with the likes of, Kirill Kaprizov and others. I mean, this is a loaded Minnesota team. They're one of the best teams in hocky for a reason. And the Blackhawks have gone toe-to-toe with them.
You had Olympians out there versus, the Blackhawks is really what it boiled down to.
Not even your best Blackhawks necessarily. I will say this about Lev Shinov. I know a lot of people still want to shit on the guy because he was a second overall pick, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. There has been a notable improvement since the Olympic break for Artem Levshinov. And I feel like game by game, he's getting stronger. Yes, there are still some small mistakes, but he's a 20-year-old defenseman. I mean, the fact that he's playing huge minutes, that stretch pass to tie the game, sending it through the neutral zone to Bedard and ultimately onto the stick of Frank Nazar to make it 3-3 to even give them a chance at a point was such an impressive play by Artem Levshinov. I think we're starting to see the growth, and that's encouraging. We know he's probably 2 years from being.
You keep tracking the growth. I'll keep tracking the deficiencies.
And that's fine. But he's 20, Tony.
I know.
And he's 20. And
he's playing 20. But you do have Chris Chelios talking about, some of these things in the intermission of a nationally televised game that weren't all so great about Artem Levshinov and the reasons why we needed to pull him back. And yes, he's taken that step forward since the Olympic break. But if we go back before the Olympic break, we sort of had to pull him from the lineup for a little bit.
Sure.
And get him reset. And if that's what's helped him take some steps forward, good. I don't want to see that backtrack throughout the rest of the year, and I want to see the continued growth. We'll see what we get out of him. But as you said, he's 20. There's a long road here. But he's got a lot of pressure on him, and he's going to continue to have a lot of pressure on him.
100%. And I think too, this is something that we've talked about a lot over at Bears on Tap. It's the growth doesn't necessarily need to be linear. It just needs to grow over the course of a season. And I think we're seeing that right now with Levshinov, especially since the Olympic break. There's been growth. He's had some rough games. I mean, it is what it is. He's made some mistakes, but he's getting better, and you can tangibly see it on a night-to-night basis. A lot of the really over-the-top bonehead shit has largely cut back. Now it's little things. Now it's mastering your position on the ice. I think of the Ryan Hartman goal. I think that's a perfect example of it, right? You go out to meet Kaprizov below the line, and as soon as you do that, Hartman backfills where you were with the vacated ice and bangs one in on Spencer Knight. It's just learning where your positioning needs to be against a player like that, knowing that they can feed the puck into a high danger area right in front of Knight. Little things like that he's going to continue to work out and get to know and get to feel. And remember, this guy hasn't even played a full NHL season yet. So there's a lot of growth that still needs to happen. But again, I thought this was a good game for Artem Levshinov and just the sense of his growth. And that's really at this point all you can ask for, especially he was also on the top pairing, right? That was a big change of pace as well in this one. And it was cool to see Big Lou rip an absolute piss missile. Hardest shot that has registered in a goal of the season in the NHL.
Yes.
Over 102 miles per hour. What
a
rocket from Big Lou. I love me some Big Lou, man. We're becoming this is a Big Lou Stan podcast nowadays.
Yeah. We were talking about Big Lou last year. And now I see the name Big Lou all over the place. It's great. It's great to see. Love us some Louis Crevier here on Four Feathers podcast.
Absolutely. And you love when you can find a guy in the 7th round that is bringing value to your hockey team on a night in and night out basis. And this one as well. Don't happen often. And I'll tell you what, this is another one, Tone. Stay hot, Frankie Nazar. He has been on a bender since the Olympic break. Another multi-point effort from Frank Nazar. Another step in the right direction for him right now, just based on where he's at, including the incredible cold streak he had during the kind of middle days of the season, including missing time with the injury. Right now, he would be on pace for a 54-point season over 82. That's really encouraging out of a guy who's really playing his first full professional season of NHL hockey. And he's staying hot. If he continues this over the next 15 games, because we're right at that mark now where there's 15 games left in the Blackhawks season. He continues that pace, that number might look closer to a 70-point pace over 82, assuming he was healthy for all the games, the way he's really come on now after this Olympic break. And that has been the most encouraging thing to see so far.
Would you say that he's the most encouraging player in the forward group so far this season, Ron, in terms of growth? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's hard to ignore the step forward that Connor Bedard has taken. Bad English on my part. Like that can't be ignored. Yeah, that can't be ignored, right? Right now, I think I saw the numbers the other day. 97-point pace over 82 right now for Bedard. Huge growth from the 67 points he had a season ago. So you'll take that, and then that's massive, right? That's your pillar player taking that step forward in his third season. But outside of Connor Bedard, absolutely, it's Frank Nazar right now. There's a lot more youth to come, I think, on this team. I think Ryan Green has certainly been an encouraging player from what he's done in a two-way aspect of hockey. I think you've gotten to see some other flashes from some of the other young guys, but I think a lot of the youth right now is still on the blue line, right? We're starting to see the influx of some of these younger players into the forward group here. Blaver, who we've mentioned, obviously names coming up that we'll talk a little bit about are on the hot streak here as well. It's very, very encouraging to see what Frank Nazar has done to this point.
I agree. I wrote about it last week, Ron. Frank Nazar finding his groove, and he's continued to do that since I hit publish on that article, and that's good to see. I'm thinking that little stretch in December was more of a blip on the radar than a cause for concern, even though I myself at certain points in time we're starting to wonder, is he fully healthy? What's going on here with this? He's really turned it around. He's finding the back of the net, and that's what they want him to do. He's the second most exciting top six forward you have. And hey, when they do pair him and Bedard up and sort of go to that nuclear option, it's delivered some results. The old nuclear option. You remember the nuclear options back in the heydays. Him and Bedard do have that chemistry. They're starting to figure it out together. And I know obviously you got to separate the two of them sometimes to balance the lineup out a little bit, but it's good to know that when you need some offense, whether that be in overtime or in the final stretch of a game, you can go to those guys and they can make something happen. And that's good news for the Blackhawks going forward, Ron. And you hope that continues.
Most definitely. I think I saw a statistic today that when both Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar tally a goal in the same game, the Blackhawks are like 6-1-1 on the season. Just incredible stuff when those two youngsters are putting the puck in the back of the net. It's going to continue to help. So, Tony, you mentioned it. We'll talk a little bit more about it and what's on tap next. But a rematch with those Minnesota Wild, the chance to maybe get back on Thursday night. That one will be on ESPN Plus and Hulu only.
Just get us a win. I can't stand them.
Yes. Break the streak.
Please.
Break the streak.
I don't want to be embarrassed anymore.
I feel that. I don't want to be embarrassed.
Don't let it go to 20.
No, can't. You got to take care of business. Got to take care of business on Thursday night when it's all said and done. Tone, let's transition from the now to the future. We got some youngsters that we need to talk about. Prospects, guys on their active roster as we stand. The first one being Anton Frondell. The SHL season has come to a close, and Anton Frondell became just the fourth 18-year-old to have a 20-goal season in the SHL, marking him as the first since Daniel Sedin did this back in 1998-99 season. How about that for Anton Frondell?
Now, that's a name I don't like. Good for Frondell. I don't like the Sedin twins, but pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. Now, I was not a Swedish league, ball mower by any stretch of the imagination, Ron, at the beginning of this season, and actually dating back to when Frondell was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks. You told me this is a pretty impressive league to be playing in for a kid his age. And tracking it throughout this season, I remember a point in time, Ron, when you and I were talking about, like, is there something wrong with Anton Frondell? If we rewind the tape a little bit, we can go back and find a time where he was buried. Fourth line, maybe not even cracking the lineup for a little bit there. Really turned that back around, even though he was producing at the time, really turned that back around. I believe he's also, scored the OT winner in their first playoff game so far this postseason. Mm-hmm. So Anton Frondell showing up when his team needs it. That's good stuff. That's what you want to hear when you're prospect watching, monitoring the prospect situation a little bit. Those types of headlines are good headlines to hear. That your draft pick here, who potentially could wind up in your lineup at some point still. We got to wait and see how long this run lasts for them. But, he's making an impact in games that matter, and also putting up stats that are ridiculous for his age. Those are all good, positive things that gives you hope for the future.
Absolutely, Tony. And to your point, the what's wrong with Anton Frondell question occurred, but it never turned back to where he was playing top 6 in their lineup. He was largely in their bottom 6 the entire season. I think that's what makes this even more impressive. He wasn't playing top 6 minutes and still managed to pot 20 goals in a league where only 4 18-year-olds have ever done that, he being the 4th. I think that's even more incredible when you look back on his season now, because
arguably yes,
it's not like he was getting ample opportunity to go out there night in and night out and play a ton of minutes and get those points.
More or less earning his ice time here.
100%. But every time he was stepping onto the ice, he was making a big difference. And he really came on pretty hot late in the stretch here to make sure that Djurgården made the postseason. Again, he was sitting at 18 goals with 2 games to go, and he got to that 20 pretty easily in those last 2 games. And I'll tell you what, man, I think one of the most impressive Swedish seasons we've seen. There's some really good young players over there in Sweden. Virgo Bjork is another name. He's draft eligible this year. We saw Victor Eklund, pardon me. He was drafted last season as well as in the first round, I believe, by the New York Islanders, if I remember correctly. He's also playing with Djurgården. Tons of Swedish talent for young players right now. And again, there's a reason they won the World Junior Gold, because they are just loaded top to bottom right now with youngsters that are coming over and are going to influx more talent into the NHL. And one of those players certainly being Anton Frondell. I believe he was named Hockey News' top prospect in the top 50 as well. In a recent ranking was Anton Frondell. So lots of love for Anton Frondell. And Tone, you'll have Scar Anton Frondell. I love Anton Frondell. Ooh. I'm so excited for Anton Frondell. I've actually started picking up and learning Swedish. Fun fact. That's a little development over the last week for Ron Luce. And I'll tell you what, man, I am so fired up about what Anton Frondell can be. And I'm going to save a little bit of it, because I'm also going to talk about that a little later, like you mentioned with Connor Bedard. But this was a historic season for Anton Frondell, and I think it cannot go overlooked. And to your point as well, you mentioned it, scoring the OT winner for Djurgården in their first playoff game. I know Blackhawks fans are probably like, shit, we don't want them to win because we want Frondell here sooner. But that's great experience for him to come in through a big moment like that and come in clutch to help your team win in a postseason game to keep your season alive. That's incredible for his development as well. So it is kind of a double-edged sword of sorts right now with they're up 1-0 in the series, but he gets the OT winner, and that's big development points for him.
Yeah, would you rather him have terrible games and show up here all sort of pissed off in a rut, or perform well? That's sort of the question there. I'd rather kind of see him perform well, although I do want to see Anton Frondell before the season's over.
Absolutely. And I hope we still get the chance to do that, but we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of another young player that will likely be stepping into the Chicago Blackhawks lineup next season, Roman Kanserov, there was reports coming out that his team over in the KHL, I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I will butcher it, but they locked up the number 1 seed going into the postseason in the KHL. So as a result, he was just a healthy scratch to keep him and a couple other key pieces healthy and in good spirits. That means he finished the season with 36 goals in the KHL this year. An incredible season for Roman Kanserov. Another guy I cannot wait to see on NHL.
Who are you more excited for?
Man, this is tough.
Or Kanserov?
I'm right now going to say Anton Frondell, and I feel like just because he's more of a known commodity, right? It's a lot easier to watch Swedish hockey. We saw him on the World Junior stage. You know, there's been a lot of Anton Frondell in the spotlight. It's been a lot easier to follow his development. Whereas the KHL is kind of closed off to the United States for the most part. You really can't get a whole lot in terms of full game coverage outside of Russia. And because they're not competing on the international stage with everything going on in global politics, we don't get to see him against the best of the world, right? Where I would think he would probably be representing Russia in, for example, the past Olympics or, you know, in the future in what could be the World Cup of Hockey, even though there's some possibilities that they could be returning to the World Cup of Hockey in 2028, according to some things I've heard. Neither here nor there. I think because Frondell's the more known commodity, I'm a little more excited about him. But that being said, it's hard not to be excited about what Roman Kanserov has done, because you look at the numbers and you look at the company that he's amongst for a 21-year-old in the KHL. There's some legendary Russian-born hockey players on that list who have come over to the NHL and become stars. Are you in the same boat, or are you on the Kanserov train heavier than the Frondell train?
I'm on the Kanserov train just because it's an unknown commodity, right? Like, you hear all these good things. You've sort of got the that mystique, the mysterious factor, because you haven't really seen much of him. So I'm excited for him to make his way over, sign, get all this stuff done, get on the ice, and then either be wowed or completely underwhelmed by what we see, right? Like, it's probably going to be one or the other. I don't really see this one going in a middle ground. If it does, okay, that's fine. We get, you know, whatever it is. But I think that, you know, for all of the lack of offensive firepower and what we're looking for, pure goal scorer, sort of what we've been told that Kanserov can be. You know, what does his game translate to at the NHL level? Does he look more like a Nick Lardis, or does he look more like a, you know, like a Demidov, or someone that's, you know, that next tier top 6 bona fide forward potential type guy? So I think with Frondell, you sort of know, like, maybe he's on the first line, maybe he's on the second line. I don't think he's going to fall below the third line. With Kanserov, I think that there's this unknown whether or not this guy is actually, you know, could he potentially slot up in there on the first line on Bedard's wing, and, you know, does Bedard set him up and he comes in his first rookie year and just light it on fire? Is there going to be massive struggles in translating the game to the NHL level? You know, what's that going to look? I think that one's going to be more of a roller coaster. So I'm excited to ride that roller coaster of what is Roman Kanserov going to be once he gets over here, and what's the development plan with it. They don't know. They're like you said, we haven't been able to watch a lot of it. There's not a lot of highlights. The ones we see are really special, spectacular highlights that break out through, you know, the hockey world online and social media. But what's the day in and day out of Roman Kanserov look like? I think that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. Is it always electric, or is it, you know, are these just the special moments that you see once in a while and everything else is sort of tame? So I'm excited to see him, just because I think it's more of an unknown.
No, and I think that's totally fair. I will say this: you mentioned, you know, will it translate immediately to the NHL? He's going to be a little bit older than this player when they debuted in the NHL. But Nikita Kucherov's first season with the Tampa Bay Lightning, he played 52 games, only 18 points, 9 goals, 9 assists. But The immediate season following in a full 82, 65 points with almost 30 goals. So Kucherov caught on quickly.
Yeah.
And I think with Kanserov being a little bit older coming over and he's going to also, I think the big difference is too, you think about that Tampa team that he walked into, you already had Steven Stamkos. You already had some really good hockey players in place where he was playing a little bit lower in the lineup. Roman Kanserov is going to get top 6 minutes almost immediately as soon as he steps foot in Chicago. So I think there's an opportunity, Tony, where we look back on his rookie season and we revisit this conversation about that unknown commodity and say, hey, man, like, yeah, maybe he didn't wow us to the extent I think people were subtly hoping for, right? Where he just burst onto the scene and was this immediate star. But I think we confidently could be sitting here next year and saying, this kid just put up a 55-point season as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we got to be really happy about what he just did. So
yeah,
I'm also intrigued to see the transition. And I think that goes for Anton Frundell too, right? Like that's a natural progression for these young players coming over from Europe is how are they going to translate to the smaller North American ice, and how quickly can they make that transition to, start really being a heavy contributor for the Chicago Blackhawks moving forward. Speaking of a guy who is not really contributing to the Chicago Blackhawks a whole lot right now, and is very much the basis for a lot of discussion online, is this free Nick Lardis watch? For those that are curious, Nick Lardis has been playing on the fourth line. He's got 2 games in this last 5-game span where he has less than 10 minutes of ice time, and 2 more of those 5 games where he has just over 10 minutes. I'm talking, I think it was 10:08 and then like 10:26 of ice time. He's had 1 game where he played what I would consider normal-ish minutes for a bottom 6 player, which was about 12 minutes of ice time over those last 5 games. Ben Pope published an article about his usage and his role today. We've heard from Jeff Blashill and his comments about the player over the course of, the last few games. And of course, the fans online have been incredibly loud about this one, wondering why Nick Lardis is not playing higher up in the lineup and getting an opportunity. So, Tony, I want to turn to you here first and just get a feel for where you think things are at with Nick Lardis. What do you think about the situation with him right now playing on the fourth line and unfortunately being kind of ineffective in that role at this moment?
You know what, Ron? This is something that really kind of passed through my radar sort of unnoticed. I'm not really surprised by this. I know that there's a vocal community that wants more out of this, but did you really expect him to just walk back in here and be on the top line or the top 6 after what we sort of saw when Bedard was down? It wasn't overly impressive. And there were times we talked about this when he was sent back down, where you kind of had comments from Blashill about, we want him to play a little more physical. We want him to go and retrieve pucks. We want him to do these types of things. That had to be part of what was worked on when you're down in Rockford. And so far, since he's been recalled, I really haven't seen much of the improved Nick Lardis. And I know that there hasn't been a lot of ice time, but when he's on the ice, I really haven't noticed him contributing either. So I think it's sort of a little bit overshadowed by the fact that Frank Nazar's been putting the puck in the back of the net, that Connor Bedard has been on the on the upswing again. You found offense, for lack of a better term, in these past couple of games, despite the shutout in Vegas. But I just feel like for some reason Nick Lardis has really fallen down the I'm worried about this alarm bells. Why is he on the fourth line? I know that everybody wants to go out there and talk about, why is Andre Burakovsky there? What kind of dirt does he have on Jeff Blashill? All this blah, blah, blah stuff. And, you're entitled to your own opinion. I get it. I don't know. You've got a veteran player that you brought in here to play top 6 minutes, and that was probably discussed before the season started. If you wanted to separate yourself from him at the trade deadline, you probably had an opportunity to at least shop him around. Maybe it didn't work out. I'm not in the front office. Don't know if that was talked about, but for whatever reason, it seems like Andre Burakovsky is playing on that top 6 this year, and that's the plan, and they're sticking to that plan. Nick Lardis sort of has to earn his way into that. And, for me, give him a little bit more opportunity on the fourth line. But if you're finding yourself in positions in these games where, maybe Bedard's taking an extra double shift, or you're looking to juggle the lines up a little bit. We've just mentioned, you got to throw out the nuclear option, go to Frank Nazar and Connor Bedard at times, and then you mix in some of the special team play. It's not really surprising to me that Nick Lardis is sort of the odd man out there. In fact, I'm more or less surprised that he's not in Rockford right now, if we're being honest between the two of us here. And for the listeners, I thought it might have been more beneficial to leave him down in Rockford if that was what they were grooming him for, was to be a top six guy. Maybe he should have stayed down in Rockford and played top 6 minutes. That doesn't seem to be really their plan here for whatever reason. And, if he's going to try and make himself stick in the NHL for the rest of the year and into next year, you're going to have to make the most of the opportunities that you're given. I think he's got a world of talent, and obviously that there's, the pedigree and everything that's on his resume thus far. But I guess you could say I was whelmed, Ron, with his first appearance in the National Hockey League. Obviously, he didn't have Bedard and everybody, but I think we're just trying to rush into who's that guy that's going to be on Bedard's wing, and we're not happy as a fan base with Andrei Burakovsky being that guy right now at this very moment, because we want answers. People want answers, instant gratification. And dare I say that if you do throw him up there, we might be disappointed in him. And you know what? Protecting him in this role right now could be the right thing to do. I don't know. It's just, me playing devil's advocate on the whole matter. But I guess, I was sort of surprised by Ben Pope writing that article today. I read it. I thought it was good. I thought he brought up a lot of valid points with it. But I guess the way I've sort of watched this sort of differs in that opinion a little bit, Ron. And I'm sort of curious what your thoughts are on this. And you might want to hit the Ruffle Some Feathers button.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
Tony, I'm so happy that you feel that way, because I completely agree. Jeff Blashill has come out and said players need to earn their ice time. Yes, they absolutely do. Because guess what, Blackhawks fans that are dying for Nick Lardis to be on the top line? You know what Nick Lardis doesn't do? Retrieve pucks. You know what Nick Lardis doesn't do? Back check. You know what Nick Lardis doesn't do right now? A lot of the things you need in a player that's going to play next to Connor Bedard. There's a reason Ryan Green is playing on the top line this season, because he does a lot of those things. He goes to the front of the net. This is the same group of people that are pissed off that Connor Bedard's the one getting physical with teams when there's nobody. Nick Lardis isn't going to be the guy that's going to go up there and get physical with teams. Unfortunately for Nick Lardis right now, he's a one-trick pony. He is a shooter. That's what he does. He shoots. And the biggest knock on him, let's remember, folks, he wasn't a top 10 draft pick. He was a third-round pick. Why are we coddling players that were third-round picks? He was a third-round pick because he didn't shoot inside of the fucking face-off dots. Everything was from the outside. And you can get away with that in juniors. You can't do that in the NHL. It's not how this shit works. And just because he's a shooter doesn't mean he's magically going to go up to Bedard's wing and make that top line better. There's no guarantee of that. He was, I think back to when he was up the first time, most of anything that he did was because Oliver Moore was putting it on a freaking tee for him. And he was ripping shots. That's the only time he made an impact. He was getting bullied. He was getting pushed around. And guess what? If you're not going to be able to combat that in the NHL, you're not going to survive in the NHL. I like that he's on the fourth line and he's earning it. I think he has the right mindset. I commend Nick Lardis right now for what he is doing. He is trying to invent himself. Because here's the thing, everybody. Don't forget, for the people that are calling out for Nick Lardis, well, he's got to be a top 6 forward. What happens when your top 6 is full next season when the two guys we just fucking talked about are taking up wing spots in the top 6? And Anton Frondell and Roman Kanserov. You know who's not getting top 6 ice time? Nick Lardis. If he's going to survive as a part of this Blackhawks future, he's going to have to be a third or fourth line winger. And you know what that comes with? It comes with learning how to play a complete hockey game. He's getting the opportunity to do it with the big club because they think he's exhausted that in Rockford, because he is scoring at a respectable clip in Rockford. But now he's got to be able to show that he can develop and be a good player in the NHL. And I understand where Ben Pope's coming from. Hey, it's not working for Burakovsky to get out of his slump. Why not throw Nick Lardis up there? Nick Lardis doesn't have the experience Andre Burakovsky does. Yes, Burakovsky's maybe not showing it on the score sheet, but there's little things that Burakovsky's doing over the course of a game that benefit Ryan Green and Connor Bedard by having that veteran on the ice that knows hockey and has played in this league for a long time. And that goes like that gets so forgotten because everybody chases numbers and chases statistics in terms of the fan bases. There are intangible things that you can't see on a score sheet that these guys bring to these lines. There's reasons that Teuvo Teravainen and Tyler Bertuzzi and Ryan Donato are still on this team, and why Andrew Mangiapane is getting a look as a third line winger. And he's a perfect example, right? We talk about players that looked like they could become stars, like a Nick Lardis. Andrew Mangiapane had a 35-goal season in Calgary. I know a lot of people don't realize that because nobody watches Calgary Flames hockey in Chicago. People were starting to talk about Andrew Mangiapane as if he was a part of their future core in Calgary, only for him to fall off, not be the same player anymore, ultimately go to Edmonton, and now end up in Chicago as a cap casualty for the Edmonton Oilers. He's trying to reinvent himself and show that he can contribute as kind of a grittier, a little bit of scoring prowess winger. If these guys are going to exist in the NHL, they got to be able to do the dirty shit. We're seeing Connor Bedard find that edge to his game. We're seeing Frank Nazar find a little bit of edge with his speed and the way he plays. Nick Lardis is just going to have to do the same thing. And it's coming on the fourth line, and people don't like it. But guess what? That's growth in the NHL. And not every one of these guys is going to work out. Just because they have sexy numbers in the minors doesn't mean a damn thing about what they're going to do in the NHL. He's got to produce. He's got to earn it. And I'll tell you what, Blashill has commended him for all the things. Hey, we wanted him to work on this. He's been actively working on it and has admitted that he's actively working on it. And we want him to do this and we want him to do that. I think Nick Lardis is the right mindset. This is not a shit on Nick Lardis session, but rather this is a get off the expectation that this is the NHL video game where you can throw anybody on an elite player's wing and they're magically going to be good. That's not how real life fucking works. And if you don't like that, sorry, I successfully ruffled your feathers then, because that's the way it is. And Nick Lardis is going to need to continue to grow as a complete hockey player, not as a one-trick pony. The only guy in the NHL that has successfully made a career of being largely a one-trick pony is Alex Ovechkin. That's because Alex Ovechkin is maybe the greatest shooter, not even maybe, he is the greatest shooter ever. That's the only guy that was able to successfully do that. And even he
played physical.
He played physical.
Yeah, he played physical.
He did other things. There's not a single player that you can tell me was a true one-trick pony that had a great NHL career. That doesn't happen. You can do that in the minors. Can't do that at the world's highest level. Nick Lardis is going to continue to work on shit. But guess what? It's going to come with less ice time. And if he shows confidence and grows, maybe he will get an opportunity higher up. But I commend Jeff Blashill for not just handing him ice time. Because then these guys don't learn anything when they get handed opportunity, or they get overwhelmed and stunt their development. Hello, Stan Bowman era of watching prospects come up with unfair expectations and get tainted from the start. Be patient. Stop calling for Jeff Blashill's head because you look ridiculous. And let this thing play out. He's earning his ice time, and he's going to get better, but he's got to be able to show he can be a complete hockey player in the NHL. Period. That's what it is. Tony, do you care to ruffle any feathers?
I mean, I think that this one is fairly sufficient, but I'll add on a little bit to this. And we haven't really done a pulse check on where we're at with Jeff Blashill in his first season as head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, but I've seen a lot of discourse lately. And you know this from talking to me. I'm fairly impatient when it comes to this, the expectations of the rebuild and where I would like to see this team at right now. And, largely that's Yeah, just the desire to watch winning Chicago Blackhawks hockey. I don't have a lot of bad things to say about Jeff Blashill in his first season as a head coach. And for better or for worse, coaching in Chicago is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. This is not a town that you come into and, it's going to be, easy to win over the fan base, easy to win over the respect of the media. I haven't seen a lot of, ire or, distrust or like major things that people have gotten worked up over with Jeff Blashill until recently when it came to this Andre Burakovsky and Nick Lardis. It's really like one of the first times I've started to see this, people getting very irate and hashtag mad online about the coach. And I think overall he's got the locker room sort of under control. He's stayed out of the fray for doing extremely dumb things. And we've both watched dumb coaches and managers for all the teams that we've rooted for in Chicago. Jeff Blashill at this juncture has not done something to the likes of Jeremy Colleton. He's no Pedro Grifol. He's no Matt Nagy. There's a lot of names in Chicago.
He's no Matt Eberflus.
No Matt Eberflus. He's there's names there that I would rank far below what Jeff Blashill has done so far this year. And let's just take some stock in this. Before the Connor Bedard injury, before the Frank Nazar slump and injuries that accommodated that, in a year where you were going to shift off your whole entire leadership team, you have seen improvement and growth in the standings. You've started to incorporate a lot more youth, which is what his directions were from the front office. He's executed those things for better or for worse. And is everything going to be perfect? Absolutely fucking not. There's no way that he's going to make every right decision. Joel Quenneville didn't make every right decision in the route to Stanley Cups. No coach has made every right call across the board. And it's okay to question coaches and lineups and all of that stuff. But the fact that we're starting to see some like fire Jeff Blashill, he's an idiot, that type of thing, that's, to me, that there's a lot of noise out there and a lot of just anger that, you had a bad day, you get online, you want to throw Jeff Blashill under the bus because the Hawks lost and your day at work sucked and whatnot. By all means, you're entitled to go fire that off. But now that we're starting to see this like more and more often, I guess I just don't see where it's warranted yet. I can see a point where we could be talking about this next year at this point in time. And we've had a full almost 2 years under our belt and there's starting to see cracks in the foundation, or we don't quite have this all worked out or put together. But, when he was hired, Ron, I think we sort of went through this exercise of like, is he going to be the guy who's here when this team is competing? I don't think we've answered that question yet. I really don't. But I would say that, at least for me, it's been a pretty okay, middle of the road. I'd give it a C+B, somewhere in that range of a season. It wasn't like, hey, he came in here and turned everything around a la Ben Johnson, right? Like, he's not going to get those accolades from the Chicago fan base and the media. Like, it's not going to be anything like that. But it was leaps and bounds better over what we saw from Jeremy Colleton and Anders Sorensen last year.
Yeah.
I mean, just the eye test, right? Like, what the fuck are we doing? Isn't the thing that we talk about every night. The first time that you and I have had what's up with these lines discussions is really today and over this last little stretch with Burakovsky, who, like I said, has found himself what I would deem the fan fall guy of the season. Every team has one. You remember Chris Kunitz. Every team has one. This year's version is Andre Burakovsky. Jared Tenorti was under the bus for a while. Like every Blackhawks team is always going to have that one guy. But for all of that, there hasn't been this constant, wow, this guy sucks as a head coach every single day where you're pissed off about it. I'm surprised I'm seeing it coming from certain people that it's coming from recently. I don't know about you.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I've been very pleased with what Jeff Blashill has done. With the point that they picked up last night in the loss to the Wild, they have already exceeded last year's point total in the standings. They've taken a step
15
forward.
more games left.
Yeah, they've taken a step forward under Jeff Blashill. I like Jeff Blashill's kind of no bullshit attitude. I like that he makes guys earn it. I like that, his mantra coming into the locker room this season was fight for your teammates. And this locker room feels like they're gelling on a level that
this is something
fantastic.
this is something that I'll pull apart. Fight for your teammates. I want to see a little bit more of that physicality. I know that's the message. The roster, I don't think, is put together the right way to do some of that stuff, but at least that's the message. And if somebody got the message, it's Connor Bedard, because he looks like a completely different hockey player out there.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what,
that's your litmus test on it, whether or not people are bought in. That's going to be your captain next year.
And let's talk about, speaking of captains and things like that. This is a hot topic around the NHL right now. Look at what happened to Matt Grzelcyk the other night against Utah when McBain caught him up high and there was no penalty call. Every Blackhawk on the ice went after McBain. Every single guy. You know what happened in Toronto? Austin Matthews took a knee-on-knee hit from Radko Gudas that ended his season, and not one Toronto Maple Leaf did anything. You want to talk about locker rooms that are in shambles? It's not Chicago. It's other markets right now that are struggling with that. And I think Jeff Blashill's got the team in a great spot. And let him continue to grow this team. And I guarantee you right now, if they come in next season and Frondell and Kanserov are contributors and Bedard keeps playing at this crazy pace that he's played at, and Nazar continues to look good, and some of these other young guys take another year of pro hockey step further, and Spencer Knight continues to look like a Vezina type goalie, this team's gonna fuck around and compete for a playoff spot next year. I really firmly believe that. And when that happens, I don't want to hear any of those people that are calling for Jeff Blashill's head right now start to stroke the ego and stroke the cat, saying, "Oh, Jeff Blashill, you did such a good job."
I'm sure you've got receipts, Ron.
Oh, I'm sure I'll find some over the course of the summer. That is for damn sure. Tony, transitioning to something a little more positive, shall we?
Time to give out some stick taps.
Let's do it. Let's give out some stick taps. Tony, I want to let you have the floor first here for this one.
Sure, absolutely. And this is one that we've sort of hinted at a little bit here, but there's a player on this team that it's so necessary to talk about this guy over and over again. Obviously, that's Connor Bedard, because he is the pillar of this franchise, the most important player on the roster right now, and is going to be for the foreseeable future, Ron. And I wanted to stick tap his season because we're already, like you talked about the pace. We're already nearing career highs in year 3 for Connor Bedard. This was without, a significant chunk of the season missed again this year due to injury. Already at 64 points, 27 goals, 37 assists. But where I really wanted to focus in on the Connor Bedard stats, year 1, plus minus, was minus 44. Year 2, Ron, minus 36. Okay.
Oof.
In 54 games so far. Now, in year 1, he played 68. So you're talking about, you got another 15 games. You're going to get right around that 68, 69. Nice number for Connor Bedard this year. Nice. He's sitting at minus 4. That is an immense improvement for Connor Bedard when it comes to defensive play when he's on the ice, because this was a huge knock on his game, Ron, the first 2 years. Can this kid defend? Why are they getting run out every single time? Now, some of this is going to, of course, be attributed to Spencer Knight and the defense playing a little bit better behind him, obviously. A very young blue line. But I will say this. that is, a 40 or 32 point improvement over both of those seasons. Some of that is attributed to the way that Connor Bedard has learned to play a little bit more of a two-way game. And we've given him kudos all show for this, but now we're looking at the full body of work. We're looking at what he's done. He's still putting up all those points. He's 3 away from tying his career high 67 points last season. That's going to get smoked. I'm assuming that we're going to wind up somewhere in the 70s, if not maybe push 80. We'll see where we get. We'll see where we wind up. A couple multi-point games, and this thing can get really interesting. But Ron, I really think that plus-minus improvement, and hey, maybe playing on a line with Ryan Green and Andre Burakovsky has helped Connor Bedard out, in that regard as well. But that is something to stick tap, man. In my opinion, that's a glaring improvement in the stats here in year 3. I was probably expecting him to be somewhere maybe minus 30, minus 26. Sort of bring that number down as we go. This was very, very good to see, and it's not only that either, Ron. It's not only that. Face-off percentage in both year 1 and year 2 in the league, we're at 38%, 38.9 in year 1, 38.3 in year 2. He's improved that up, Ron, to 46 at the dot. That's also a huge improvement. So we've taken some massive steps in certain parts of the game for Connor Bedard that has really started to show here in year 3. And I think, before the season's over, we want to celebrate this and give this some stick taps, because this is measurable growth from Connor Bedard. And I know he's going to get tons of accolades and all this other stuff. Ron, he's 20 years old, and we've made these kind of strides in the NHL. That's really impressive, and I felt that it needed to be called out on today's show. So Connor Bedard is my stick tap for today.
I love it. I think it's a worthy call out as well. I'm going to stick tap, something that we alluded to a little bit earlier as well, and that's Anton Frondell. A historic season in the SHL with minimal opportunity compared to what he could have had in terms of time on ice and line mates and things of that nature. He's played in the bottom 6 for Djurgården as an 18-year-old and put up 20 goals, just the 4th in league history as an 18-year-old to do so. He has been absolutely spectacular. And I tell you what, in the midst of this excitement over Anton Frondell and the Blackhawks faithful, seeing the pick and saying, wow, maybe Kyle Davidson did the right thing here by taking Anton Frondell. And maybe this guy is going to truly be a player and a piece of the future going forward. We were almost without Anton Frondell. Had Kyle Davidson successfully executed the trade with the Columbus Blue Jackets from the year prior, they would have had the opportunity to select Anton Frondell in this past draft, not the Chicago Blackhawks, because then Ivan Demidov would be a Chicago Blackhawk. So I sit here and I stir the pot as a part of my stick tap tone of, it's going to be interesting to see watching Demidov in Montreal and Anton Frondell once he arrives in Chicago over the next 5 years and saying, what did the hockey gods allow to happen to make that move? Because I would make the argument, Tony, when Columbus stayed put, they stayed put because Caden Lindstrom fell to them at 4. And everybody was shocked because they were like, what is Anaheim doing by passing up on Caden Lindstrom? This guy looked like a surefire bet as a top center prospect. What are the Ducks doing? They're ludicrous. Bennett Sinecki looks really fucking good for them this year. That's the guy they took instead.
Yes, he does.
So everybody wanted to ridicule the Ducks, and the Ducks made the right pick. And right now, Caden Lindstrom, you haven't really heard a whole lot about what's going on with him, and is he coming up to the Blue Jackets at any point? And we don't really know. So maybe Columbus is sitting there kicking themselves a little bit too, because they're like, well, shit, we could have had next year's pick and a shot at the Anton Frondell kid. And he's shaping up right now to be an electric player potentially for the Chicago Blackhawks. So I love me some Anton Frondell. I can't wait to see him in a Blackhawks sweater. I hope it's sooner than later. But again, we'll have to keep an eye on what happens in that Djurgården playoff series. They have to win one more game to move on to what becomes a best of 7. Otherwise, if they lose the next 2, they are eliminated, and then we could see him before the end of March in a Blackhawk sweater. So it'll be completely indicative of what happens over in Sweden in the coming days. But stick taps to Anton Frundell. What a freaking season for an 18-year-old in the SHL. Legendary, historic 18-year-old season for Anton Frundell in the SHL. Tony, a quick standings update. As always, the Blackhawks are 9 points out of a playoff spot and 12 points out of the basement. They're pretty much shaping up right now to have pretty much the third or fourth best odds in this draft of landing the number one pick. And I think, you ask Kyle Davidson, hey, you guys took a step forward literally in the standings and still had a chance to add in one of the deeper drafts in recent memory. I think Kyle Davidson would tell you he's pretty excited about that opportunity, especially if Florida plays themselves out of that top 10 and that pick no longer becomes protected. You got 2 swings at this in the top 15. That could really start to turn the tides here for the Blackhawks in the not so distant future in terms of talent in that pipeline. In addition, what's on tap next? The upcoming slate of games. We've hinted and mentioned it a few times already, but the Blackhawks are back in action on Thursday, March 19th. They are in Minnesota. They will be up in the Twin Cities in St. Paul. That's a 6:30 start time. Again, this is an ESPN Plus Hulu exclusive. So if you don't have either one of those, you cannot watch this game. I guess I should say you legally can't watch this game.
There's ways.
There's ways. And then on Friday, it's a back-to-back, but the Blackhawks are back in Chicago. They will be at the United Center. This is the final game of the season that the Blackhawks will wear the black uniforms against the Avalanche on Friday night. That's a 7:30 start time. That one's back on CHSN for all the Blackhawks faithful. And then on Sunday, March 22nd, Nashville comes to town. That's a rare 2 o'clock in the afternoon start. That'll also be on CHSN. And then on Tuesday, March 24th, they will be at the New York Islanders beginning a 4-game series out in the metropolitan area. That includes that includes the Rangers, the Devils, and as well as the Philadelphia Flyers in that road trip as well. But that'll start against the Islanders on Tuesday, and that's a 6 o'clock start time on CHSN. And Tony, I'm guessing we will be back before that Islanders game here with another show. Because if we are not, people may not hear from us until April here at Four Feathers Podcast. For those that don't know, Ron Luce has a birthday coming up. Tony's just passed. Happy belated birthday to you on these airwaves, sir. And we're baseball's around the corner. And
baseball is around the corner.
Some Cubs on tap obligations and duties I have next week as well as a part of the opening day festivities. And for those that are, there's a fun little personal note. My older brother, who I have not seen in 6 years because he's in the military, will be in town starting this Friday. So it's going to be a lot of fun to have him in town. He's a diehard Hawks fan. He's taking my tickets actually for Sunday's game, Tone, and going with his buddy that is coming into town with him. So they'll have an absolute blast. Then he's joining me over at Wrigley next Thursday for the festivities as well. He's also a diehard Hawks fan. So shout out to my brother, Jim. For coming into town, and we'll get into some shenanigans, and it'll be a lot of fun. But we'll also have a lot of fun watching Blackhawks hockey along the way too, because this year they actually do play on my birthday. They just won't be at home, and that's okay. We'll watch it on CHSN when they take on, I believe it's the New York Rangers on my birthday on March 27th. But Tony, unofficially, we have added it to the Games They'll Want Back tracker. You did a great job selling this one, number 13, and that's the game against the Minnesota Wild on St. Patrick's Day. Tony, before we get out of here, I want to remind everybody, as always, to follow along at Four Feathers Pod on the socials. Be sure to head over to YouTube, like, subscribe, hit that bell button for us here at On Tap Sportsnet. You'll know when all of our great shows go live, including us. The Bulls on Tap guys are live this evening as well, doing a watch along as the Bulls take on the Toronto Raptors, and all of our other great shows, Cubs on Tap, Sox on Tap, Bears on Tap, etc. Will go live right here, and you can catch all that with hitting that little bell button, and you'll get notified when we go live. And of course, if you like us and you listen to us in podcast form, please give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate that. That helps us, and it helps us bring more Blackhawks content to you over the coming days, weeks, months, and years. And of course, down on tapsportsnet.com and at On Tap Sportsnet on the socials, and people can check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Tony, this was a pleasure. As always, good to talk Blackhawks hockey yet again. The final 15 games on the horizon here for the Chicago Blackhawks. Some influx of young talent as well along the way. It'll be a lot of fun to close out the 2025-26 season with high hopes for what's to come in the fall of 26. Tone, what do you say? Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.